The Honored Matres return from the scattering, but what if their genesis was not Bene Gesserit betrayal, but Tleilaxu design? But biological weapon Tleilaxu design, wrath forged in spice-altered flesh, their cult of sex and violence a tool to dominate, could human evolution have been weaponized? The honored Tleilaxu Matres return from the handiwork, but what if sisterhood, but biological weapon Tleilaxu design, wrath forged in spice-altered flesh? The answer lies in the spice's dark alchemy, a question that fractures the desert. The desert's fracture reveals a truth more insidious. The Tleilaxu, masters of forbidden alchemy, did not merely observe the scattering, they engineered it. Spice-altered biology birthed the Matres, a weapon to pierce the Imperium's heart. The Butlerian edicts banned thinking machines, yet flesh could defy them. The Matres' wrath is not chaos, it is design. The Bene Gesserit's plan, built on fragile symbiosis with mentats and oracles, now teeters. A single order's collapse unravels the web. The golden path, once a thread through the labyrinth, now dangles over an abyss. The Imperium's architects did not foresee this, a human storm, sharper than any machine, to devour their legacy. The God Emperor's famine time choked Arrakis. Siona Nori Atreides burned her house's name to fuel a rebellion. Leto Roman 2,000-year reign, built on balance, began to fracture. From the void beyond the scattering, the Honored Matres returned not as exiled rebels, but as something sharper. Their bodies glowed with spice-born mutations, their rage honed by generations of Tleilaxu alchemy. What if their genesis was no accident? The Tleilaxu, masters of flesh, spliced Bene Gesserit cells with sandworm DNA, breeding an army to unravel human limits. They called it *perfection*, a species fused with its own weapon. The Matres' return was no rebellion, it was a harvest. Leto's famine, that slow starvation of spice, was their catalyst. A storm brewed in test tubes, unleashed to devour the very Imperium that birthed it, the Bene Gesserit's role. A shadow in the machine. Their breeding plans collided with Tleilaxu ambition, but the architects of this horror were not the ones in white. The Matres are not a failure, they are a proof of concept, and their war is the cost of evolution made violent. The heretics of Dune call them a cult of violence and ecstasy returning from the scattering, a paradox made flesh. Their biology does not merely adapt, it detonates, spice-forged ovaries, genes rewritten in the crucible of chaos. The Tleilaxu did not breed them as pawns, they sculpted a force to unravel the sand. The Bene Gesserit myth is a shadow cast by greater architects. For centuries, the Tleilaxu whispered in the dark, splicing human DNA with the madness of Arrakis itself. The Matres are not relics of a failed rebellion. They are the apex of a millennia-long experiment, evolution stripped of mercy, accelerated through agony. Their scattering was no accident. It was a trial, a seed hurled into the void to see if chaos could take root, and it did. They return not as women but as weapons. Their ecstasy is the scream of cells rewriting. Their violence the price of a body outpacing its makers. The Tleilaxu sought to break the cycle of control. To prove that power need not be inherite, it could be *engineered*. What if their war is not an end? What if it is the first breath of a new species, born screaming? The Matres do not fight for territory or creed. They fight to prove that biology is not destiny, it is a blade, and they have no master, only the spice. Only the void, only the next mutation. The sand winds howl through buried corridors, carrying whispers of a truth the Tleilaxu etched in blood. Chapter House, Dune's brittle pages crack under the weight of their secrets besforged flesh, gene-spliced nightmares. They did not merely traffic in faces. They brewed alchemy, a brew that could twist the human coil, splice psionic threads into DNA, birth creatures who bled awareness itself. What if the Honored Matres were not a rebellion but a thesis, a wetware prototype? The Tleilaxu watched the Bene Gesserit's millennia-long puppetry, their careful breeding of the Kwisatz Haderach, and laughed. They had no need for subtle puppets, they sought a storm, a force that could unravel the Gesserit's tapestry, thread by thread. Their labs reeked of raw spice, the air thick with the acrid tang of transformation. Here they grafted the God Emperor's own genetic code into women, fused it with the scattering's cast-off relics, fragments of lost lines, mutated by spice and time. The result, beings who did not merely think but burned with thought, their minds sharp enough to shatter the Gesserit's mental chains. Consider the matter's grotesque power, not the Gesserit's polished control, but a feral, hyper-accelerated will. Their bodies, honed by Tleilaxu alchemy, became living weapons muscles coiled with spice-induced density, eyes that saw the architecture of fate. They did not need the Emperor's prescience. They needed only the sword of Damocles, a Tleilaxu invention that let them kill across time. The scattering was no accident, it was the catalyst. Only when the spices flow fractured, when human lines were scattered like seeds, could the Tleilaxus design take root. The matters rose not from betrayal but from design, a counterpoint to every Gesserit plan, a blade turned on the architect. And so the question festers. If the Honored Matres were always the Tleilaxus handiwork, war what was the true target of their vengeance? The Bene Gesserit reformed after heretics of Dune *. They shed their old dogma, they embraced survival above prophecy. Their new order faced a foe they could not name. The Honored Matres' psionic wrath reshaped their genetics. But who shaped the matters first? The Tleilaxu mastered flesh long before the Sisterhood's schemes. They bred the Gom Jabbar. They fractured the scattering, why not weaponize spice itself? Consider the timing. The matter's rise mirrors the Tleilaxus exile. Their biology defies human limits, spice-forged instincts, a hive mind honed by suffering. These are not accidents. The Sisterhood's reformation became a mirror. They adapted to a threat they did not create, a lab experiment turned predator. The Tleilaxus shadow hand guides even their rebellion. What if the matters are a vector, a tool to purge the spice's purity, to collapse the guild's monopoly? The Tleilaxu seek not power but annihilation, a reset, a new canvas for their godless design. The Sisterhood's betrayal was a red herring. The true architect worked from the waste, and the question festers, if the matters are their weapon, who are they meant to destroy? The Bene Gesserit, the spice itself, or something deeper, the last remnants of a humanity the Tleilaxu never intended to survive. The texts contradict themselves. Heretics of Dune whispers of Bene Gesserit refugees, chapter house mutters of Tleilaxu hands, both cannot be true. Yet both cannot be false. What if the alchemy theory crumbles not from evidence, but from the same spice-fueled madness that birthed the matters? The Tleilaxu did not merely twist genes, they weaponized evolution itself. A rebellion was never their design, a weapon was. The matter's rage was not stolen, it was implanted. Their strength not rebelled into being, but engineered. The Bene Gesserit's betrayal was a red herring. A smokescreen for the deeper horror, that the Tleilaxu turned human will into a biological warhead. The refugees who fled the scattering were not the architects of their own ruin, they were the canvas. Their bodies, their instincts, their very rage all recalibrated. The matters did not rise against the Bene Gesserit. They rose as the Bene Gesserit's undoing, a paradox made flesh. The alchemy theory fails here. For what the Tleilaxu forged was not a tool, it was a question. A single terrible question: how far can humanity be stretched before it becomes something else? Something hungrier. The Tleilaxu did not build empires, they built experiments. Beneath their spice-racked world they spliced flesh with fury, merging human DNA with the very thing that made gods tremble. The Honored Matres were not an accident, they were a design. A weapon forged in the void between the scattering and the return of the Kwisatz Haderach. What did they breed? Not warriors. Not even monsters, they bred purpose. A hive mind sharpened by spice-fueled rage, bodies twisted to survive the harshest wastes, minds honed to hunt the Bene Gesserit's grand design itself. The Tleilaxu knew the price, they paid it gladly. For every matter born, 1,000 died, for every victory, a collapse. But collapse was not the goal. Extinction was not the goal. The Tleilaxu are not mad, they are accountants of the impossible. They calculated the cost of erasing a sisterhood that had shaped millennia. They saw the risk and multiplied it, 1,000-fold, 10,000. Because the Bene Gesserit's power was not in their genes, It was in their asterisk control asterisk, and control, once shattered, cannot be mended. What remains is a question older than Dune itself. How far can a species fall before it claims the fall as triumph? The Honored Matres are not the end of humanity. They are its asterisk reboot asterisk, a system crash rewritten in blood and spice. The Tleilaxu did not create them to rule. They created them to asterisk unmake asterisk. And in that unmaking, thaged their future on a single, terrible truth, that some victories are only won when the board is set alight. The Imperium's bones cracked under the weight of its own hubris. Spice-fueled empires are built on the illusion of controlla, lie the Tleilaxu knew better than any. They did not breed the Honored Matres to fail. They bred them to asterisk unravel asterisk. Imagine a womb soaked in melange, not to birth a Kwisatz Haderach but a swarm of feral gods, their minds knifed open by prescience's poison. The Tleilaxu alchemists, those weavers of abomination, did not seek balance. They sought a mirror, a species twisted to reflect the Imperium's rot, its violence, its hunger. The scent of burnt spice clings to their origins. Not the sweet incense of stillsuits, but the acrid stink of flesh seared by forbidden alchemy. These were not women who chose their path. They were asterisk made asterisk in the scattering's ash, their bodies latticed with the same genetic scars that haunted the bitch. Paul Muad'Dib, caged by his own visions, saw the storm but could not grasp its architect. He fought to shape destiny, while the Tleilaxu had already proven destiny is a sieve. Rage is a language the Matres speak fluently. They do not rule through prophecy or breeding charts. They rule through the annihilation of all who cling to the myth of order. A Bene Gesserit might plot across centuries. A matter reduces centuries to dust. Their rise is not a betrayal, it is a verdict. The Imperium's fragility was never in its enemies. It was in the lie that evolution could be tamed. Frank Herbert's pen did not merely carve a universe, it carved a warning. Every kneeler's vow, every Gom Jabbar's sting leads here, to the revelation that no messiah, no sect, no godlike mind can chain the tide of becoming. The Honored Matres are not an aberration, they are the logical end point. A species that worships control will be devoured by what it sought to master, and so the board burns. Not because Paul failed, but because the game was never his to win. The Tleilaxu did not merely gamble with genes, they bet their species on a blade's edge. To forge an army that would not just conquer, but asterisk absorb asterisk conquests fueled, relentless, reborn. What price extinction if the end justified the burn? Their alchemists twisted flesh into weapon, merging human and horror until the Matres became both predator and prey. A species engineered to collapse the scattering's fractures, yet how many Tleilaxu died in the kiln before the first matter stood? The cost was not just bodies, it was asterisk certainty asterisk. They traded their future for a present without rivals. But here is the reckoning, when the Matres outgrew their maker's design, who bore the true extinction. The Tleilaxu vanished, yes, but so did the boundaries between hunter, hunted, and human. Was this evolution or annihilation in slow motion? The truth festers deeper, a genetic weapon, not a rebellion. Tleilaxu fused spice and fury, forging warriors from stillbirths and vengeance. What if their wrath was engineered? The next mystery awaits. Unearth the alchemy that defied death. Subscribe, witness the birth of a horror. Acrid spice smoke clings to their bones. The Bene Gesserit's grand design